Hi, everyone. Inua's just making himself a hot drink. If you could just bear with us a few minutes, we'll be starting very shortly. I think he's coming now. Thank you. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Hello. Hi.
Hi. Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia Jackson, Events Manager at the Society of Authors. Thank you for joining today. This is our penultimate afternoon tea, which is with playwright, author, poet, and graphic designer Inua Ellams. This event is part of the 12-week SoA Home Festival, which I have programmed with colleagues, and it is now in its final fortnight and finishes next Thursday, the 9th of July. All sessions are free, but if you can afford to donate a few pounds to the Authors Emergency Fund to support authors in financial difficulty due to the health crisis, please visit our GoFundMe page, and my colleague Robin will be posting that in the chat for you. If you have any connection issues, please press the reconnect button at the center of the screen. Today's event runs for 45 minutes. Inua and I are going to have a chat for 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll have some time at the end for your questions. Please do post them in the chat. If you've got any comments, we'd love to see those as well. Here's a bit of background on Inua. Born in Nigeria, Inua Ellams is a cross-art form practitioner, a poet, playwright, performer, graphic artist and designer, and founder of the Midnight Run, an international urban arts-filled nighttime playful walking experience. He's a complete works poet alumni and a designer at Whitespace Creative Agency. Across his work, identity, displacement, and destiny are reoccurring themes in which he also tries to mix the old with the new, traditional African storytelling with contemporary poetry, pencil with pixel, texture with vector images. His poetry is published by Flipped Eye, Akashic, 9 Arches, and several plays by Oberon. So I thought we could start with a few things a bit closer to home in terms of the Society of Authors. Unfortunately, we could not be at Southwark Cathedral this year for our annual awards, but we announced the winners online a few weeks ago, including the Gregory Awards, which are for a collection by poets under the age of 30, which were founded in 1960 by Dr. Eric Gregory. Inua, you've been an Eric Gregory judge for the last 3 years. Could you share some highlights and standout poets that you've encountered during the process and what's it's been like to be a judge?
Yeah. I've loved it. One, I realized how much of a dinosaur I am because the new kids are writing new shit. Can I say shit? It's all right. I made it in the most inclusive incarnation of the word. They're just writing really interesting, wild work, and being able to see it made me want to light a fire in my bones to change the kind of poems that I was writing. So it was a joy just seeing the books that have come and gone, seeing books that were submitted in 1 year, withdrawn the second year, edited and tweaked and updated, and come back on has been really great over the last few years, and also working with different judges and understanding their approaches to judging has also been phenomenal, and that's affected the way that I look at poems, that I consider poems. So it's been great. Books that I've loved, Victoria and Bully's book was really awesome, and I think she won in the first year. Most recently, I'm really bad with names. Mary Jane Sean's book was really great as well. One of the ones that crossed the finishing line. Sean Hewitt's book of poems, which has just come out this year, which I think it was shortlisted in one of the Forward Prize poetry and competitions. Also magnificent. And a friend also won this year. And because it's blind reading, you don't know, you just read the books, and then in the end we discovered. Her name is Amina Jama, and her book was really gorgeous. So this is just like four of the poets who have won, and there've been a whole coast and contingent. And also the breadth of poetry was really interesting. Lots of poets who have of African origin submitted work from of East Asian origin as well, from Ireland and Northern Ireland as well. So the breadth, the span, the mix of cultures was quite interesting to read and to consider how they were writing in the same sort of cultural or like the generational space, but really creating really diverse work. in the years when I was eligible for the Eric Gregory, the rules didn't allow me to enter. The rules were a little bit archaic. You had to be a British subject in order to qualify to enter. And as a Nigerian, as an immigrant, I didn't. And as a citizen of a country that was colonized, being called a British subject also was problematic for me. So when the rules were finally changed, I was too old. I was ineligible. So being invited to judge meant quite a lot to me. Yeah.
And can you talk to us a bit more about the judging process itself? Is it quite grueling or?
So the first time, well, you just have to plan. You just have to structure for it. The first time I was involved with Eric Gregory, I was one of the first readers. So they sent me something like 60 books, and I had to choose my top 30 or so, then pass it on. Then those were put together. Then the highest like levels of the books with the most votes then made it into the final 30, which was presented to the judges. So that is, for the last 3 years, that's the space that I occupied. And it's a lot of reading, but it's a lot of it's just the requirements of the job, really. And you have to give each book and each writer space to grow, to try and develop them, and then you create patterns and ways of reading and divining patterns from books. So it isn't not about speed reading, but it's about a way of getting a sense of the poet's poetics, then seeing how consistent they are, keeping that up through the entire collection, and then trying to gauge their potential, how much an Eric Gregory would mean to them right now. If they're too advanced and they don't need it, then maybe not so much. But if they have a lot of potential but aren't as polished, you just think giving them this little bit of money and encouragement from the establishment might really send them a long way. So those are the things we take into consideration when we're deciding who to give the award to, and how much money to sort of dish out.
Thank you. And it's worth noting as well that my colleagues put in the chat the link to Blackwell's website. So the shortlistees and winners for 2020, their books are available via that link. And by purchasing via the link, you are also donating to our Authors Contingency Fund. And going back to this year's awards, the Travelling Scholarships were established in 1944 to enable British creative writers to keep in touch with their colleagues abroad. Congratulations, Inua, on winning one of our Travelling Scholarships this year. Can you share what this means to you and how you'll be using the funds?
So I'm an immigrant, like I've said. I left Nigeria when I was 12 years old, and I've lived in the UK since. But my battles with the Home Office lasted until 2011, between 1996 and 2011, and I'm still not out of the woods yet. I applied for citizenship this year. I was refused in autumn last year, in around December. And when I contacted the Home Office again, they doubled down in the position, and they refused to grant me citizenship because, according to them, I was not of good character. Which was even more insulting because I literally wrote a whole essay in The Good Immigrant. It just came to haunt me a little bit. But when I started writing, because of my immigration status, I couldn't leave the country. And I am nomadic. The peoples I descend from in northern Nigeria were nomadic. The Hausas and the Fulanis traveled around. So wanderlust has been in my bones for the longest possible time. And when I got the right to live and work in the UK in 2011, which meant that I could travel, I traveled a lot. I think 1 year where I didn't spend more than 2 continuous weeks in the UK. I was always on a plane, running midnight runs across Europe, or researching or taking part in literature festivals. But even before that, when I was writing my second play called Black T-shirt Collection, which is set right across Europe, but also in Egypt and in parts of Nigeria, and ends in China, I couldn't go to any of those countries. So what I had to do was buy a whole bunch of books and a whole bunch of documentaries, and sort of imagine that I was there and research from my seat. So I'm involved in another epic play set in pre-colonial northern Nigeria. And I planned to visit them last year and plan to visit them this year. One, the lockdown has made that impossible, but two, the conflict in northern Nigeria, which is to do with extremist Islam, is so rampant that Nigerian politicians no longer travel by road. They travel by helicopter because it's dangerous on the road. And when I was reaching out to academics in northern Nigeria, they flatly told me not to come because they thought I might not make it out alive. It's that
Wow.
treacherous.
Yeah.
So this traveler grant means that I can reach out and just commission them to create or write some of the articles or do some of the research material that I need in order to write this play, to go to specific locations, perhaps take some photographs they can send to me so I can imagine the worlds in which my characters inhabit. And that's what I hope to do with the fee.
Thank you. Quite the opposite of Wanderlust is the lockdown and the global pandemic. So I think we'll talk a bit more about your work and your creative routine. So the last few years have been incredible to see how your career has soared with sold out plays at the National Theatre, including Barbershop Chronicles twice, your adaptation of Chekhov's Three Sisters, and then Barbershop Chronicles being at the Roundhouse and the international tour. In fact, I think The Three Sisters was the last play that I saw personally as well.
Yeah.
And I also attended the wrap party, and I think that was the last time that I saw you in person. And it was really nice to be able to eat jollof rice and plantain in the foyer of the National.
National Theatre.
Yeah. However, 2020 has not quite panned out as we expected. So how have you personally been affected by the global pandemic in terms of your creative work and cancellations and postponements? I think you touched on it briefly, but if you could expand on that.
I've lost so much work. The week lockdown was announced, I was supposed to travel to New Mexico in America to perform a show called An Evening with an Immigrant and work with lots of immigrant communities on the border between Mexico and America. From there, I was supposed to travel to New York to see a couple of shows and host a bunch of meetings with theater directors and producers who were interested in my plays. And from there, I was supposed to travel to LA in Hollywood to work with the director of a TV series that I'm working on. And all of that was cancelled. And I lost, I'm going to be brutally honest, I lost £10,000 worth of work in those 3 weeks.
Wow.
All of it gone. So, and because I'm a freelancer, those are huge repercussions. You don't know where next your cash might be coming from.
Yeah.
So the financial hit has been immense. I work in theater and film, and we can't do any of those things anymore. So the plays that I was working on that have been indefinitely postponed because we don't know when theaters might open, and there were plays specifically to do with people of color, which the conservative theater industry think is a risk now because they're not sure if non-Black people might be interested in those stories and they want to be more calculating. So some plays have been just indefinitely shoved to the side because of that. So it's impacted me in every conceivable way. Projects I had going on, projects I was researching, financial wise, all of that stuff has plummeted drastically. And it was a shock because of how sociable I am as a person, because of how many events that I create specifically to gather communities together. Lockdown meant I couldn't do any of that. So my social appointments, which also tend to be my working appointments, all of them vanished. And suddenly I was stranded and I was an island in my flat, just my own. And the emotional toil and the mental health toil of that was eviscerating. It was for the first 3 weeks, all I did was watch the news and sleep. That's it. I didn't do anything else. How was it like for you?
I was pretty much the same. I was completely obsessed by the news to the point where my daughter was like, "Can you stop watching the news now?" And she's 5. So I kind of had to take that on board. But I think it's the missing my friends and family that's taken the most toll on me personally.
I found it also impossible to write anything. It was for the first 3 weeks. I think besides the news, yeah, I binge watched the complete series of Breaking Bad. Yeah, so I did all of that and slept. And then after those 3 weeks passed, I became very productive. I wrote like four articles, four essays, edited various scripts, and little things like that. And then I crashed again.
Yeah.
Everything just disappeared again. And I was commissioned to write a very short play by the National Theatre. I wrote the first draft. It was like pulling blood from stone. And then they asked me for a second draft, and my brain just went dead. And then
Okay.
I was able to tease something. And then I don't know if they're going to do anything with it because I'm not sure how good it was, but it seemed. And then I had to write a poem about the pandemic, which took the longest possible time, but I finished it late last week. We edited it, and it's also going to be the final poem in my collection, which is going to go to print imminently. It's my first poetry collection.
Amazing.
And so that's all I've been able to really write. Yeah.
I think it's good that you are actually able to create new content, though I think a lot of people have found it quite challenging. So how did you keep yourself upbeat? Because you've spoken about the emotional and mental impact that it's had, but what has sustained you?
Cooking. I've always been okay at it, but this time I had to make all my meals. Before, I'd eat in the trains, between running for the train, sometimes between meetings, but now I just have to plan everything. So
Yeah.
that has been really good. I've been impressed by the things that I made. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't really follow recipes. I just follow my nose and stuff, but it's been good. So that helped.
Have you made banana bread?
No, I haven't made banana. Oh, I'm not a fan of. I've made plantain fritters, which is kind of close, right?
Kind of
Like
nice, yeah.
flour and something banana-ish.
Yeah.
I've made that quite a few times. I really love it. I started exercising more, which
Good.
is good, and I started running. Again, my current best time for 5K is 27 minutes and 20 seconds.
I think that's impressive.
I'm like, my first time it was 30 minutes. So within 4 runs, I've cut down 3 minutes. I'm trying to get down to 25 minutes, and then I'll be happy. So running, exercising, cooking has really helped. Yeah.
Yeah. And how have you connected with loved ones? Have you been having family Zoom quizzes or anything like that?
Not Zoom quizzes. My sisters FaceTime me with their 4 kids. My twin sister has 4 kids. My little sister has one daughter. So I'm just plagued by babies, just cramming around the phone screen with their like honey and peanut butter smeared on the screen and all of that.
Yeah.
I've met my sister once, no, twice. I sat down and we stayed in the park. I donated my old iPad. I gave my old iPad to my twin sister. So she came with all the kids, and the kids have grown up in lockdown. One of them climbed me like a tree. I mean, I stood there, and he just did that until it was on my shoulders. It was incredible. And I FaceTimed my parents a couple of times. My parents all got text messages from the NHS to stay home. So they were all in lockdown, really.
Yeah. So how have you had to adapt your creative writing routine?
Um, like so what I in terms of what I've been doing is doing a lot of thinking around things that I intend to write. So my next play is called Once Upon a Time in Sokoto. Well, I don't know. Well, that's the next play I'm writing. There are others that hopefully might be produced before then, and it's
Yeah.
set in pre-colonial northern Nigeria. So what I've been doing is escapism through reading lots of academic books, and trying to understand what the world was like. And academic books are really dense. Like some days, if I'm able to get through 20 pages of the book, it's a victory. And I have to research and Google things. And because some of the context and sort of the content of the books is still partially accurate, and they have maps and things like that. Sometimes I'm reading and then I have Google Maps open, so I'm trying to chart the journeys of these things. So that has been my creative process is mostly that, yeah, just reading and researching and trying to make notes. Yeah, that's it.
So I guess you've had more time to do forward planning, because normally you'd be doing, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I did start a new event series because I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, I
I
was going to ask about that. If you want to talk about your online
Yeah,
events that you've been doing.
I started this event called a poetry film hack, which is a digital version of something that I did before. I only did it once, where I commissioned poets to write poems about a film, and it's specific to a particular moment in the film. And we watched the film together. And then straight after, the poets come on stage and read the poem. So it's a really deeper understanding and deeper reading into a film through the lens of really great, magnificent writers and poets. So we did one at the Barbican, and we're supposed to do two at the Barbican this year, all of which has
Right.
been cancelled. And I just figured out a way to do it online using Netflix Party,
Yeah.
which is something that works on the Google Chrome browser, where you create a link to a film in Netflix and everyone else has Netflix accounts, but they all sign in and you all watch the film together. Then straight after that, we jump onto Zoom and the poets read their poems. And it's been really, really lovely because people just watch from various parts of the world.
Yeah.
It's another great way of creating a community, a digital community, and then celebrating poets and celebrating the poetic mind and the poetic intent and the approach to narrative. So the first one we did was Clueless, which is like
Yeah.
a classic film from the 90s, and the second film we did was The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind.
Okay.
Um, and we have three more poetry film hacks before the year is out. One is our first international one, and by that I mean it was commissioned by the Singapore Writers Festival, which will happen in
Okay.
October. And there's going to be one in August with the Barbican, and potentially another one of ours around December. So yeah, there'll be more poetry film hacks. At the moment, I'm trying to get Netflix to pay me to do this, so I can pay the poets
Yeah.
properly and my producer properly. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that you charged for your events as well, which I think is wise.
Yeah, there was the option to make it free, but I knew if I did so, it'd be difficult to then put a fee on it. So we just
Yeah.
agreed £5 per person. And the beautiful thing of things like Zoom or things like Netflix Party is that it's entirely scalable at no extra cost. So if we're able to get a really dedicated followership, we can pay the poets properly. Um,
Yeah.
and the payment, to be very again very honest, we have like a percentage model. So the poets get 10% of the ticket fees,
Okay.
and then the rest goes to myself and my producer, and the administration fees and the advertising fees and blah blah blah. But that means that however large, however many tickets we sell, the same price point stays the same. Really,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Um, it was amazing to see the buzz when National Theatre showed Barbershop Chronicles on YouTube as part of the Home series at the beginning of the lockdown. How did it feel for your production to be included in the lineup? Because it's been very successful for them.
Yeah, it was incredible. I think when we locked on, there was some like 15 or 20,000 people watching at the same time, and then over the week it grew to 500,000 people, and which was wild and incredible. And I began comparing myself to Shakespeare's and they had like 600,000 people watching for the week. But I was thinking, yeah, but those are like dead writers who have like 300 years ahead of me. So for me to happen and to create such a moment within my lifetime was incredible. And just people on the continent who never got to see the play because the play was
Yeah.
brought there got to see it and got to enjoy it, which has been really, really humbling and joyful to see. Um, I don't know if I should say, again, I'm being very honest. Um, One of the guys that I interviewed in South Africa when I was researching the play, his name is Shoni Sani. and Shoni had never seen the play because he was here.
Yeah.
And Shoni, even though he worked for the British Council and his job was to point me around to barbershops, but we just developed a very fast friendship to the point where I hung out with all his friends and took me to his barber, and his barber and he let me interview him and his barber. And Shoni spoke about really delicate subjects. And I said, I think I want this to go in the play. Do you want me to change your name? And Shoni said, no, I want people to know it's about me. So that character is called Shoni Sani. And the conversation that his character has in the play is almost verbatim. And I wrote other characters around him. But
Yeah.
Shoni's interview is almost as it was. And Shoni finally got to see the play on the live stream. So we were chatting about it in the days before, and it was really happy. But Shoni caught COVID-19.
Oh.
And yeah, and he passed away 3 days ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and a lot of us are still just coming to terms with that. Yeah, the last 2 days has been pretty horrible, and I haven't even told the cast of Barbershop Chronicles. I'm going to tell them when we're done. My producer knows, and we've just been thinking about what we could do, and it's going to be a live, an online memorial for Shoni next week. So no doubt we're going to have conversations about how what we can do just to honor how much he gave to the play, to myself, and the various actors who played him and never got to meet him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the lockdown just became even more personal.
Yeah.
I've had other friends who have passed away by COVID-19, but this was just even somehow closer. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. And you said that he did manage to see it.
Yeah, he did manage to see it. I'm happy that happened. He was just such an incredible man. Like he had the most infectious, it feels like a cliche to say this, but he had the most infectious, like cackling laughter like a witch, and he just pulled you into his whole world. And he was fiercely intelligent, fiercely political, but deeply like traditional in like South African ways, which just comes out in his character in the play. But even from his hospital bed, he was tweeting the Minister of Health in South Africa saying, "This isn't good. What are you doing?" And he was lobbying, And it's a loss for so many people. And he worked right across the African continent in South Africa. He had lots of colleagues in Norway. He did a lot of work there. So the memorial has people from right across the world streaming in. Yeah.
That's definitely been one of the low points of the lockdown in terms of losing people. And I saw that you were online last Friday for Brother Ty's funeral.
Yeah.
As well. But it was really lovely that we were able to participate in some way, even though we weren't able to say goodbye to him properly.
Yeah.
But moving on to theatre being online, how sustainable do you think that is?
I really don't think it is. There have been lots of conversations, ways to try and digitize stuff. But what makes theatre is when we're in a room together, and if there are mistakes, if there are errors, isn't the togetherness of storytelling. I'll give you an example. I saw a play at the National Theatre years and years ago, and towards the end of the play, someone in the audience had a heart attack. Lights went up in the building, and the stage manager comes and says, someone in that row has had a heart attack. Is there a doctor in the house? And someone says, I'm a doctor, and the person runs down and helps this gentleman and stabilizes him. From the ground, right? The gentleman said, carry on with the play. I'm okay. And then everyone did, and then the paramedics came and took him out after he'd been stabilized. But that is something incredible. This is what I mean about theater. You give yourself to the storytelling, and you're all invested in it, right? And it being digitized just doesn't it isn't the same thing, right?
No.
Because we then find ourselves competing with television and things created for the screen, and we will always be second guessing ourselves. We'll always come up short if we try to do the same thing. So theater needs to be theatric. We can show screenings of theater, but that is an endpoint. Theater is entirely about the process. It's entirely about being in the room together. Is life, the life happening of it is what differs it from all other art forms.
Going a bit further into the theatre industry, so the Black Lives Matter movement is really gathering momentum in the UK, particularly since the death of George Floyd. Over in the UK, what do you think the theatre industry needs to do in order to become more inclusive?
Well, the things that I mentioned about my work being suffering because as of a person of, it centers people of color is one of the things. Like our work shouldn't be considered risque anymore, because that always means we're an afterthought. We're on the fringes of things. Much like I was trying to demonstrate in Three Sisters, Nigerian history is British history, because we were colonized. But the fact that I only speak English is the repercussions of that colonization,
Mm-hmm.
and our work shouldn't be second guessed and shouldn't be considered. And the reason why it does is because it exists under the banner of white supremacy, where racism exists. Therefore, everything else is other.
Yeah.
Right? One of the things the Black Lives Matter points to is the existence of white supremacy, the continual sort of like the prevailing sense of science, and it being some sort of difference of humanity, when time and time again biologists and scientists have proved that it's one of the most pathetic things that differentiates us. Like language has bigger repercussions to who we are than skin color does, for instance. So I think the theater industry really needs to grapple with that and play out the truth of that on our stages, which would then bleed onto our television screens, because that's a lot of screenwriters come from theater, and then it begins to change the visual world in which we habit, and then trickles down to all aspects of our communities. And finally, I think the most profound thing that the theater industry can do, and I think it's all industries actually, is to put Black women in positions of power and do everything to elevate their power. And I say Black women specifically because of womanism, which is the only form of resistance to patriarchy, to capitalism, which unifies various cultures and works to free everyone. Feminism doesn't do so necessarily, and even all the theories that and the activists working for environmental for the environmentalists, even that philosophy isn't as welcoming or as wholesome as womanism does. And womanism was created by Black women, and I keep thinking Black women in position of power will necessarily elevate and uplift. And I think that trickles down right across the beauty standards, the beauty industry, healthcare, mental well, all of that stuff. And I think the theater industry could do well to embodying that.
I think it'll be a good idea to, thank you for that, to go to the chat and see what the audience wanted to ask you. Lots of condolences for the loss of your friend as well.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
So from Anna Ganley, speaking of exercise, I'm watching with my 10-year-old son, who's looking at your basketballs in the background. He plays, and she says, do you play, and which team is your favorite?
Yes, I play. I miss my basketball boys. We played on Wednesday at 6 o'clock and Saturdays at 11. And since lockdown, we haven't played. So I miss them dearly, desperately. My favorite teams are the Golden State Warriors. I wrote a whole book where the protagonist is loosely based on Steph Curry, who plays for the Golden State Warriors, and the Milwaukee Bucks because of Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is Nigerian and Greek, and is also what my character is loosely based on. So those are my favorite. When I was young, my favorite teams were the Charlotte Hornets and Michael Jordan later bought, or he has the largest stakes in Charlotte Hornets. And I was also a fan of the Chicago Bulls a little bit. The whole devil on the shorts thing freaked me out just a little bit. I appreciated Jordan, but I wasn't really a massive Bull fan. I just loved the Charlotte Hornets, then the Warriors, then the Bucks. Those are my favorite teams.
I've got some, thank you. I've got some more questions. Worryingly, there is growing concern that 70% of theatres could be closed by the end of the year if the government don't step in. What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are, one, there are more sectors within our community, economy, country that are in more desperate need. And I do agree with the government that we should do everything to try and safeguard those societies yet and those communities yet. But also the theater industry is of visceral importance. So many people come through it, so many writers come through it, actors, and our greatest screen performers come from it, and our greatest screenwriters come for it and bleed into film. So I think the government should also put aside funds to safeguard them. There's a conversation going on among the theater industries where theater should be exempt from corporation tax, for instance, which does a lot for how much money they can save and how much staff they can take on. So I think those really clever financial incentives can really help to safeguard and continue things. But also subsidize tickets and subsidize transports to tickets. And this is what I mean. My friend told me about this, which exists, I think is in Germany, where if you have a ticket to a play, for instance, the ticket also includes transport right across the system from your home, trains, whatever, takes you straight to the play and straight back, which means that it partially democratizes who can afford to go to a play. Right. And I think if we begin to think of that incentive like a deal between Transport for London and theatre industries, it can just drastically change everything. So I think there's potential to deepen various communities and their trust and the embedments within the theatre industry, and to stop it being so classicist, which it still really suffers from. Yeah.
I see that your book, The Half God of Rainfall, is the Hay Festival Book of the Month, which is amazing. Yeah. As a writer, how do you think the publishing industry will change as a result of the global pandemic?
Wow, who knows? A lot more people are reading now because they're home and they need escapism. And one of the brilliant ways in which books are marketed or sold directly to audiences is through book festivals. You gather in a tent somewhere. There may be 150. If you're the Margaret Atwoods of this world, there may be 2,000 people in your tent watching you read and listen. But when the Hay Festival went digital, they had waiting list of up to 15, 20,000 people to queue just to watch a live stream of a conversation, which meant that they tenfold the audiences were able to see the same thing that had just happened in a tiny tent, which meant that they could sell more copies because people directly linked to independent bookshops and online distributors and blah, blah, blah. So I think there's vast potential in trying to digitize book festivals, for instance, and then find more brilliant ways of reaching out to audiences. And one of the things that has come about, particularly in the last few years, is what politicians are able to do with algorithms to figure out the kind of politicians, and also marketing companies, advertising companies, to figure out the kind of things to sell to particular individuals based on their taste, based on their likes and favorites, etc. If the book industry can tap into that as well, we can figure out how to sell books to people who we know be interested in those subject matter, rather than just using the traditional sort of advertising channels. So there's lots of potential growth, I think.
Thank you. Going back to the chat, Inga Vesper says, do you think we need to rethink theatres themselves, i.e. move away from cramped, gilded buildings to smaller spaces, outside spaces, maybe?
there are lots of tiny, small theaters above pubs here and there, tiny like 50-seater, 100-seater places. So I don't think we need to rethink theaters because those theater spaces exist. We just have to make sure they come back when some normality comes back and the pandemic dies down. Yeah.
Liz Mason has asked if you will consider approaching the Transport Minister about including travel in the ticket prices.
Would I consider? I mean, yeah, if you give me an email address, I just initiate a meeting. I will try to meet Sadiq Khan. I think he's facing stiff competition from Sean Bailey, who's running on behalf of the Conservatives. But yeah, I'd love to chat with him. Yeah, we'll see where that goes. But yeah, I'm surprised like no one had even considered doing that already.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Robin has asked, have you watched any other plays by the National Theatre at Home series, and what have been your favourites? I think you're watching one tonight, aren't you?
Yes, I'm watching Les Blancs tonight. What did I love? I watched Small Island, even though I saw it already. I just wanted to be amongst those voices, those characters again. I love The Streetcar Named Desire. It was the first time I'd seen it, though I'd read little bits of the script before. So seeing the whole thing was magnificent. What else have I seen that I've loved? I think those are the ones that I've loved. But what's coming on in the last few weeks is I can't wait. Les Blancs, one of my favorite plays. So much so that I bought Lauren Hansfrey's book called Young, Gifted, and Black, which is on my shelf. I can show you. I'm a huge fan. Amadeus with Finn. Oh God, I saw that play. I wrote a whole essay about Beethoven because of that play, which the BBC is going to broadcast later this year. So I can't wait to see that again. The Deep Blue Sea by Terence Rattigan. I think that's the name. I saw it at the National Theatre. It was directed by Marianne Elliott, I think. I'm really bad with names, by the way. But I loved that production. It was so... It was feminist, I think. It was really quietly profound. And it's just about this woman rising and all the waste men around her, the useless men, just don't know what the hell. And it's just this beautiful portrayal of a strong woman. And Marianne Elliott directed it, and I was in a National Theatre Zoom with her, so I just got to fanboy about the play to her. And I wanted her to direct one of my plays, but she couldn't do it. And I just can't wait to see that play again. So those 3 plays, really looking forward to them.
Thank you. My last question for you is, what are you most looking forward to once normality resumes?
I want to hold another rap party. And I want it to be about survival. And just before lockdown, I did the first ever rap party where there were no poets on the bill, just songs. And the audiences wrote poems to those songs. And we completely sold it out, and then it was cancelled. So I want to do the same thing, a rap party, just songs, just poems about survival, matched with hip hop songs that also explore the same topic in various ways. And basketball, I want to play again. I miss my friends. I'm just running up and down with those things. I'm trying to point to them.
My colleague Anna said thank you very much for answering her question. You made her little boy very happy.
Okay.
So we're just wrapping up now. Thank you. It was really good fun, and I really appreciate you taking time to sit with us today, and particularly at this very strange time. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today and all your lovely comments and questions. Thank you to my colleague Robin for moderating this session behind the scenes and being my hype woman. To remind you all, sessions are free, but if you can afford to donate a few pounds to the Authors Emergency Fund to support authors, the link is in the chat. Next week is the final week of the festival, and our last afternoon tea will be with Joanna Trollope next Thursday at 4 p.m. And on Monday, we have a session on what makes a great audio drama, which is at 3 p.m. Please head to soa.org/events to see what we have available and to book. They're free. And let's continue this conversation on Twitter. The festival hashtag is SoA at Home. And if you've missed any of the SoA at Home Festival events, please do check our Vimeo or YouTube accounts to catch up. And final thanks from me.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.